At around 10 a.m., a black Lexus sedan slowly pulled into a rest stop off Highway 94 about 40 miles west of Lansing, Michigan. The man behind the wheel, dressed in a light gray suit and pale blue shirt, looked like a businessman on his way to a meeting, which in fact he was. On the passenger's seat rested a slim leather briefcase containing documents for a policy roundtable with the state governor scheduled for noon. His name was Samuel Everett, a veteran judge with over 20 years on the district court bench, known statewide for his calm demeanor and unwavering integrity. But in that moment under the midday sun and the quiet hum of the rest area, no one cared about his reputation or accomplishments. Behind the Lexus, red and blue lights suddenly flashed. A state patrol cruiser rolled to a stop. Inside, a white officer named Dale stared through the windshield with eyes full of suspicion. To him, a black man sitting alone in a luxury car, well-dressed and composed, was not normal. Without waiting for backup, Officer Dale stepped out of the cruiser. Sensing his approach, Everett lowered his window, both hands visible on the wheel, his voice calm and polite. "Good morning, officer. Is there a problem?" No greeting returned, just a cold look up and down followed by, "We received a report about a vehicle matching this description stolen nearby." Silence hung in the air, not from fear, but from disbelief. Since when did dignity become probable cause? "My car hasn't been stolen," Everett replied. Neither loud nor quiet, just clear. "I stopped for a few minutes to check my directions." "I can show you my registration if needed." But Officer Dale took a step back, hand resting on his holstered weapon. His voice grew sharp. "Step out of the vehicle. Now." Samuel didn't want confrontation. He had heard too many stories, presided over too many cases where one wrong move turned into tragedy. He opened the door, slowly stepped out tall, and composed his hands still empty. When a second officer, a woman named Reynolds, arrived, tension already filled the air. Everett was told to stand at the rear of the vehicle, hands raised. He asked, still measured, "What am I being accused of?" No answer. Instead, Dale opened the driver's side door and began rummaging through the car without permission. Everett stepped forward slightly. "Officer, I do not consent to a search." That sentence, what should have been a basic legal right, was interpreted as obstruction. Before he could respond, his arm was twisted behind his back. The cold click of handcuffs snapped around his wrist. Officer Reynolds hesitated, but at Dale's nod she moved in to secure the other side. No resistance, no shouting, just one steady sentence. "You're making a serious mistake." At the state police precinct outside Jackson, Everett sat quietly in a hard plastic chair. The cuffs had been removed, but red marks still circled his wrists, a reminder of haste, prejudice, and poor judgment. A desk officer briefly glanced at his ID, typed a few keystrokes as if logging a traffic stop. No one asked questions. No one cared who he was. To them, he was just another middle-aged black man held for suspicion. Samuel had asked 3 times to make a phone call calmly, clearly, without anger. He explained he had an important meeting with the governor. All 3 times he was dismissed. Not now. Just wait, or simply ignored. Around him, the precinct buzzed, keyboards clacking, radio chatter, officers walking by. A few glanced his way. One smirked at the polished shoes, crisp suit. Someone muttered under their breath, "Thinks he's somebody special." He heard it, said nothing. Dale walked by a few times, casting judgmental glances. Officer Reynolds stayed in the background, her face showing growing unease. More than 2 hours passed. No one spoke. No explanations. And still Everett didn't raise his voice. He didn't lose his composure, because he knew systems only change when those within them are forced to look in the mirror. Just before noon, the precinct door opened and in walked a woman with a firm stride, hair tied neatly back, eyes sharp as steel. Sergeant Monica Yates, the shift supervisor, scanned the holding list as she moved through the hallway. She stopped at Everett's name. "How long's he been here?" she asked to no one in particular. "About 2 hours, someone replied. "Obstruction and matching a stolen vehicle description." Yates frowned. She approached Everett not in haste, not confrontational, just observing him closely. Something in his tone, his composure, gave her pause. "Your name, Sir Samuel Everett," he replied clearly. "And I suggest someone run that name before this mistake becomes irreversible." Dale within earshot snorted. "He's been doing the whole important man act since we brought him in." Yates turned sharply, her voice cold. "Then let's see how important he really is." Her fingers flew across the keyboard. In seconds, the screen lit up. Academic distinctions, judicial appointments, confirmations. The name Hon. Samuel D. Everett, sitting Judge 11th District Court, State of Michigan. Her face hardened. She checked the photo on file. It was him. Turning back, the precinct suddenly fell silent. "You mentioned a meeting with the governor," she asked. "Yes," Everett said. "On justice reform." Yates took a deep breath. "Your Honor, I apologize. This should never have happened." As Sergeant Yates opened the holding room door and quietly said, "Your Honor, we can contact the governor's office or arrange a car to take you to your meeting." Judge Samuel Everett gave a faint smile, not bitter, not smug, just the fatigue of a man who had long witnessed injustice, but never stood at the center of it. As he exited the precinct, walking alongside Yates' phone in hand, his posture composed. Eyes turned toward him. The smirks from earlier were gone. Now they were replaced by a heavy, uneasy quiet. But outside those walls, a much bigger storm had begun. Back at the rest stop, a college student on spring break had recorded the entire incident. Just 27 seconds, the video showed a calm black man being handcuffed while politely asking, "What did I do wrong?" Her voice could be heard in the background. "This is insane." He didn't do anything. That night she uploaded the clip to TikTok captioned, "Arrested for being black in a suit." It spread like wildfire. Hundreds of thousands of shares within hours. By midnight, over 2 million views. Local news picked it up. Then CNN, NBC, The Washington Post. Side-by-side images, Everett in cuffs versus his judicial headshot sparked national outrage. Hashtags exploded across platforms. Hi, Judge Everett. A dignity. In cuffs. Stopped for skin color. The public wasn't just angry because he was a judge. They were angry because even a judge's education status and dignity couldn't protect him from racial bias. The next morning inside Michigan's state capitol, the atmosphere was unusually tense. Lawmakers, policy advisors, legal officials, and journalists had gathered early waiting for the man whose name had been on every screen for the past 18 hours. At precisely 10:00 a.m., the grand wooden doors of room 312 opened. Samuel Everett entered, posture straight, eyes focused, carrying the same leather briefcase untouched by scandal. He wore a deep blue suit, measured and composed, just like his expression the day he was cuffed. No one asked the room to rise, but everyone stood, not out of protocol, but out of respect. The governor sat across from him, nodding gently. "Judge Everett, we are honored to have you here." Samuel responded simply but powerfully. "Thank you, Governor." I believe the timing speaks for itself. Before the scheduled justice reform meeting began, he asked to address the room. Yesterday morning on my way to this meeting, I was stopped, searched, and handcuffed by officers of our state police. There was no warrant, no legal cause, only a suspicion I believe stemmed not from my actions, but from my appearance. Silence fell. I am not the first, and if we fail to act, I will not be the last. A young legislator quietly wiped away a tear. We talk often about building trust between communities and law enforcement, but trust cannot exist without accountability, and the dignity of innocent people must never be optional. His words were not just an accusation. They were a mirror held up to the system. That afternoon, a special emergency session was convened downstairs in the Capitol not to debate policy, but to hold a disciplinary hearing for Officers Dale and Reynolds. Unexpectedly, Judge Everett was asked to preside over the session. At first, he declined, concerned about the appearance of bias, but after the governor's legal counsel confirmed no ethical barrier, he accepted. 2 hours later, the chamber was packed, press Department of Justice officials and a few members of the public who secured entry. The two officers entered no longer defiant. Dale's head hung low, jaw tight. Reynolds stared at the floor. Judge Everett sat at the center, flanked by 2 fellow judges and a representative from the Attorney General's office. There was no anger, no spectacle. Just quiet authority. "We are not here to relive embarrassment," he opened. "We are here to examine conduct and determine whether these actions violated legal standards and human decency. Footage played, witness statements, body cam clips, all contradicting the officer's written reports. When asked why she didn't verify Everett's ID, Reynolds whispered, "I didn't think it was necessary at the time." Dale argued, "I followed my professional instinct." But when asked why he denied Everett a phone call, his response faltered. Everett never raised his voice, but he didn't have to. Professional instinct, he said, is not a license to ignore someone's rights. After 5 hours of review, the panel issued its decision. Both officers acted negligently, violated procedure, and infringed on a citizen's civil liberties. Both were suspended without pay pending a full investigation. All past cases they handled over the last 3 years would be re-examined. As Everett read the decision, the room was silent. No applause, no shouting. Just a collective stillness, the kind that follows truth being spoken. That evening, at a statewide televised press conference, the governor stood behind the podium. Beside him was Judge Samuel Everett, his hands clasped gently, his gaze steady and deep. The governor did not begin with pleasantries. He began with this: "Today is not about revenge. Today is about responsibility." He acknowledged Everett's restraint, his moral clarity, and his choice to pursue change, not retaliation. Then he announced 3 sweeping measures. 1. A statewide training initiative focused on recognizing racial bias, de-escalation techniques, citizens' legal rights too, an independent civilian oversight board unaffiliated with law enforcement to investigate misconduct complaints. 3. A 5-year arrest record audit starting with counties showing the highest complaint ratios. When asked if he wished to speak, Everett approached the podium. A soft spotlight hit half his face, illuminating the resolve in his eyes. "What happened to me is happening to others. People without cameras, without titles, without voices." He paused. "My story is not the point. It's just the symptom. But I believe every wound can heal with enough light truth and accountability." The room was silent, not out of fear, but because they knew this was no longer a story. It was a mandate. 3 months later, A crisp spring morning swept across the flag-lined front lawn of the Michigan Law Enforcement Training Academy. 52 new cadets stood in perfect formation, shoulders squared, eyes forward, their uniforms pressed, their futures aligned. They were the first graduating class trained under the new reforms, a direct result of a single man's silent dignity shaking an entire system. And that man, Judge Samuel Everett, was today's guest speaker. He walked to the podium without a script, just his leather briefcase and a voice that had already changed a state. 3 months ago, I stood on the other side of a badge, not as a judge, not even as a man, but as a threat seen through assumption and skin. He let the words settle. That moment could have made me bitter, but instead, it made me clear. You're not just here to enforce law. You're here to protect dignity, and that begins with how you see a person. Down below, the young cadets didn't move. They listened not to react, but to understand. As the ceremony ended, cadets filed out in pairs. One young black recruit paused, turned back, and quietly said, "Thank you, sir." Everett gave a small nod, said nothing. He remained on the stone steps for a moment longer, not thinking about the cuffs, not the cold chair, but about the road ahead. Because real change doesn't always come in roars. Sometimes it arrives in quiet decisions, calm courage, and steps taken when no one is watching. And that day, Judge Samuel Everett walked away from the academy not as a victim, but as a builder of something better.